Welcome to Dylan Does Table Talk, and I'm Dylan, your host of this channel, where basically I discuss the unwavering thoughts and feelings and everyday struggles that some of us may face on a day-to-day basis, whether it be in our personal lives, our work lives, or even just life in general. Now, today's topic is all about the anxiety over finances. So, in a world where things can be so expensive and we always have that notion in the back of our mind where are we making enough? Are we providing enough? Are we financially supporting those around us that basically depend on us? Are we simply just doing enough? And it's the unwavering anxiety that I feel some of us do face. For me personally as well, I feel like for the most part, there's always we can do more in terms of work, whether it be more hours at our job, or especially if we're able to accumulate overtime, or even just in general working 2 jobs, 3 jobs, 4 jobs, side hustles and side projects. It's very hard to find the balance between wanting to provide more, but then also then feeling like we're sacrificing that time that could be spent with those that we're providing for. Even for the most part, like even if we're by ourselves, like in my situation, like I live by myself, things can feel like a bit of a struggle at times, but I feel like as long as we're trying to just simply be better and trying to develop wouldn't say a program, but develop a foundation of where we can build a revenue source in a sense where in the short term there may not be any upside to it, but as long as we're consistent and we're disciplined enough in that process, we just got to remain faithful and have faith that things will always work out in the long run, even though that first steady climb at the base camp, basically at like a mountain, starting can always be hard, but once you've got that momentum, it's very easy to hold on to that momentum and just use that as the draft. Like, for example, if you're next to a truck or behind the truck and you get that slipstream when you go to overtake it or undertake it, that is the momentum that we should all aim to develop within our lives, especially when it comes to finances, as I sense that in a world where we all want to be free and do what we want to do and not have that constraints about do I have enough to be able to allocate a certain amount to that particular cause. Like I feel like if we're just grinding away, in the short term to try and build something that can be everlasting, obviously being rich and being financially stable in a sense where we are free, where we don't have to resolve to be somewhere to provide that sense of security within ourselves. I feel like if we're money obviously is a paramount to anything in life. When you got finances, you're able to just do what you want to do and have no kind of overhead struggle that some of us may face, or even the majority of us face, especially as I said earlier in the talk, where with some things being so expensive, housing, renting, buying, interest rates, all these sort of parameters that can deter how successful an individual may or may not be. It can be overwhelming for some, and I feel like some people, they take that as a drawback to potential growth, where if you look at it in a way where, I want to be in a position where I'm financially able to, do what I want, take a step back, have a little bit of self-reflection and think to yourself, what can I do right now in this moment that can propel that feeling into something more and grow something out of it. So for example, like, I have always been, I wouldn't say always been hitting the gym, but like I hit a point in my life where I had to lose weight and I started going to a gym. I was in there for a good year and a half, and then I started doing videos, You know, these videos, they might not seem like much in the short term, but as long as you're consistent enough with those, you can develop that into something more. And when we have these little side projects, I feel like about to sneeze. But I feel like if we have these little side projects, they can become big projects in life where we're able to project our future self into a stratosphere where we're, 6 months ago or even a year ago that we never would have even thought was possible. So that just pretty much stipulates that as long as we're consistent with anything that we do, if any of our endeavors or any of our everyday tasks that we do, consistency is the number one factor that dictates how well we succeed in life. Because, it's easy enough to get up at the same time every day, just sit around and mope and, waste time, doing just unnecessary things that don't really benefit us. But if we're consistent with the things that can benefit us, it's always going to be detrimental to our future self. So even in the moment where, you might be taking loss after loss, taking one step forward, two steps back, like just be disciplined within yourself and just say to yourself, you know what, it's going to work out in the long run. And that anxiety, regarding finances, I feel like it's something, as I said before, I feel like a majority of us do have that in the back of our mind. Are we doing enough as an individual? But, financial freedom isn't just financial freedom. It's a sense of not being tied up to a particular something where if we don't do it, that financial freedom is in jeopardy. Where when we are financially free, we're able to do what we want, when we want, and basically not have any repercussions if we don't dedicate, an 8-hour day, a 9 till 5. Like, I feel like we should all strive, at the end of the day, actually, kind of off that, we've all only got one life. And I feel like if we make the most of it, like, it's easy to have that real sense of gratitude within ourselves. Like, as long as we're trying to make something out of it, because as I said, we've only got one life. I've seen this photo the other day where it was basically just a caption it was like a cemetery kind of thing. And it's like, all these people had dreams, but thought they had more time. And that kind of wouldn't say resonate. Well, it kind of did resonate me with it a little bit as, I feel like a lot of us put things off where, for whatever reasons that we're going through, if we're sick or, we're in hospital, or the financial burden of life is what is preventing us from chasing those dreams. I feel like we just got to put in that little bit of extra time to that dream and that passion that we may or may not have, and just try and make it work. Because you never know. Sometimes all it takes is just that flick of a switch and just do it. It's, for most people, it's probably easier said than done. But starting anything in life is always the hardest thing. Taking that first step, taking that first leap of faith into something and just putting your all-in effort can be very beneficial. And as long as we're trying to basically, as I said, be better on a day-to-day basis, it's going to compound into something fantastic. And as long as we look at ourselves in the mirror and be proud of ourselves, it doesn't matter, what situation we're in, especially when it does resolve to finances. I feel like it's something that we should all aspire to be better in. So, put the work in. You may not see any results in the short term, but just understand that you'll be okay. Things will work out the way it is intended. Have faith in what you're doing and let the actions of what you do reflect in who you become. Because when we're trying to be better, we're going to be better for it. Even if what you do, you fail and, you fall down and you struggle to get back up. But as long as you're consistently trying to just be better 1% on a day-to-day basis. Like it's going to compound into something greater. And within 6 months, within 3 months, as long as you got a plan and you're sticking to that plan, like, you can kind of look at it in say, for example, like a weight loss journey. Like, as long as you're doing those small incremental steps day to day, things may not seem like much, but at the end of the day, at the end of, say 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, 6 months, 1 year, you're a completely new, different person. And like, that's the sort of mindset that we got to take into anxiety with our finances. Like, we all have that sense of like anxiety, like, my bill's going to be paid one way or another, especially for those in the lower income kind of bracket. Like, I feel like if we not necessarily downgrade our living standards, but downgrade our expenses in a sense where we're not spending money on useless and unnecessary things. Like, for example, like, I went through a phase where I had Disney Plus, Netflix, Amazon, I had all these different things, but then, I'm spending an hour to an hour and a half in the gym in the morning doing weights and cardio, etc. 8 hours at work, an hour and a half travel to and from work, cooking for about 30 to 45 minutes a day, sleeping about 7 to 8 hours a night. It's like, why am I subscribed to these sort of entertainment revenues where I'm probably only going to be able to spend maybe max half an hour a day actually watching it? So it's like, it's not necessarily cutting out the things that kind of give life like enjoyment, as I feel like if we're not enjoying life, then what is life really for if we're not enjoying it to the best of our ability? But all these sort of things that we're subscribed to, it's like this, I feel like this world is a very subscriber based system where, we've got all these subscriptions, whether it be entertainment, as I stated, Netflix, Disney, Amazon Prime, HBO, you name it. There's all these sort of things in terms of entertainment, but then you also look at it as well, there's all these subscriptions in just life in general, like driver licenses, car insurance, house insurance, health insurance. It's like, it's all these different like subscriptions that we're all paying without even like taking a step back. Or I feel like the majority of us don't even take a step back and be like, why am I subscribed to all these different things in life when I should just be just existing and just enjoying my life? Like, why is it so paramount that we all have these subscriptions when you look at 100 to 200 to 300 odd years ago, whatever? It's like a lot of these people from, history books and from what you see online and different media outlets and sources and all sorts, it's like these people simply just woke up, ate, hunted, adventured, did this, did that. There was no technological, benefactors where, we've got laptops, we've got phones, we've got devices, we're all plugged into 24/7 pretty much for majority of us anyway. But it's like, if we just take a step back and just live a more simple life, we would really understand that anxiety over finances is something that isn't really necessary. Because, if we quit our job or, we get fired or anything like that in terms of our income streams, it's like, we're going to be replaced. We're all replaceable one way or another. So it's like, just take a step back, obviously try and make the most of your situation and try and make the most out of our life. As I said, we've only got one life, but, so many years ago, it's like these people had, I wouldn't say the bare minimum, but what they did have is that peace of mind. And I feel like we should all strive to have that peace of mind, and just the general consensus of, what, things may not be going my way right now, but look at the brighter side of life. Things can always be worse. You could be traveling to work, you could be traveling to a mate's house, family's house, you can get into a car accident, be severely injured, be hospitalized for months on end. You could be battling cancer, you could be battling any sort of battles in life. Things can always be worse. So I feel like if we just take the gratitude with our situation that we're in, we may not be happy with the situation we're in, but as I said, things can always be worse. And at the end of the day, if we're having anxiety over finances, that's not going to follow us to when we pass at the end of, our life duration. Like, at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. We're all going to end up passing at one point, one way or another, whether it be a long longevity or short or, medium term life, I guess. Like, we're all going to the one place at the end of the day, or hopefully not end of the day, touch wood, but you get what I'm saying. It's like, these sort of things, it doesn't really matter in a sense. So if you are having anxiety over finances in life, just understand that it'll get better. Look at the brighter side. We get to wake up in the morning, smile on our face, and that's ultimately what we should be grateful for, is simply just existing. A lot of people don't have that luxury. Like, some people are born and they're immediately in intensive care and they're hooked up to machines to keep them alive. And it's like, these, unfortunate individuals, they don't have the best side of life because they're started up on that. And then we get people that, I didn't make, $1,500 on that sale today, I only made $400 or whatever it may be. It's like, take a step back and just realize, your situation can be worse. So just look up at the sky, understand that, the sun rises every morning, the sun goes down every day, it rises the next day. And just like that, like, that's how we got to feel like approach life. There's going to be ups, there's going to be downs, but one thing is for certain is it's always going to go up. There's always going to be down. It's always going to go up. It's how you make the most of any situation and try to be better. And that's what we should strive towards. So thanks for watching. That's episode 2, and then on to episode 3 soon. See you guys.